It's been roughly 6 years since the worldwide lockdown that came as a result of the disease that starts with the letter C and ends with the number 19 first started. While the actual lockdown and quarantine aspect are nothing more than a distant memory at this point, the residual effects of the 18-month period of shutdown can still be felt today. Whether it's the increasingly worsening state of economies all over the world, the massive change to how people socialize and interact with each other, how hope in the future has essentially died and more people are falling more victim to their lowest instincts, or the fact that this new hantavirus thing is making some of us relive memories, I think it'd be apt to compare 2020 to a wound that has just been salted and still in the process of healing. But this leads me to a question that I've always had at the back of my mind for like a long while now. What if a second quarantine were to happen starting right here and right now? You know, everything gets shut down, we're back to being confined to our homes, and our entire lives now revolve around the internet. I mean, hell, we have the conditions for it. We somehow have the senile orange tyrant as president again. An important guy in Iran was popped not too long ago. There's an outbreak of some disease in a land far away, and the idiots who have the disease were somehow still able to travel. Certainly, certain things seem eerily similar to how things were in January of 2020. While nowadays it's easy enough to type this question into a ChatGPT prompt or something, I think it'd be much more fun to theorycraft and just imagine. Using your brain for once, so allow me to take you on a little trip to actually right this moment, except in an alternate reality. The bad ending, if you would. The time is today, literally right this moment as you're watching this video. You're scrolling your phone when you first catch news of some distant virus being spread from Moldova or some other country you've never heard of. All of a sudden, this virus is somehow all over the world. In your head, you go like, oh crap, quarantine is happening all over again. And before I continue on, I need to point this out that I wrote this part of the script before the news of the hantavirus broke out on that cruise ship, so deja vu, I guess? I have no idea, dude. But soon, your job tells you that dreaded sentence that a million other people heard just a little over a decade ago. Yo, employees, there's like a lockdown order in place by our government or something, and you're not coming back to our premises tomorrow. Ah, shit. It's back to that coronavirus lifestyle. Maybe when you first think of life during quarantine, the first few things that pop back into your little mind are the isolation, loneliness, the whole shtick of relying on a screen to do anything you liked, basically the whole shebang. But what people are overlooking are those early days, back in March of 2020, back in that same April, in that period of migration, when everyone had to transition from living their lives IRL to living their lives through a screen. Because after all, in this hopefully fictional second quarantine scenario, we're all going to have to go through a period of adjusting to our new lifestyle. The whole migration to niche Discord servers and like miscellaneous corners of the internet just to enjoy the hobbies you like, picking up gaming as a hobby, or even work in school being held through Zoom meetings is going to become the new normal. Except that with the advent of this fictional second quarantine scenario, this wouldn't be quite the case. A lot of people nowadays live something I'll call a hybrid lifestyle, where they do have an IRL life, but alongside that, they have an internet presence as well. I would say that I'm one of them, but I've literally had several social media accounts for the better part of 5 years and have never posted on any single one of them. This channel is perhaps the first time I'm dedicating myself to consistently uploading some form of content, and clearly I am not doing too good of a job at that. But more concerningly though, there's a decent amount of people who never left that phase of being terminally online when we all had to be online, and still rely on the interwebs for any form of socialization today. They're the types of people constantly leaving comments and controversial posts, always up in your DMs talking mad smack. Just the perpetual assholes of the internet. Like, it's not even funny, dude. Essentially, this whole transitionary period from like living your life IRL to like living it online would be like a massive throwback Thursday for everybody, except with a few key differences. The major one that first comes to mind is the fact that what the interwebs were in 2020, when PC culture was at its peak and every platform cared about not being fatphobic or something, is very different from the toxic Wild West style and sometimes straight up insane war zone that it is today in 2026. I mean, think about it. We have a massive streamer culture. We have a massive gooner culture. We have a freaking massive we have a massive lol degenerate culture, and putting all that to the side, there's one big element that I strongly believe will make this second quarantine experience quite different from its predecessor. A lot of people today talk about the loneliness epidemic that's running rampant, especially among younger generations, as the first quarantine essentially robbed them of the opportunity to develop social skills and learn how to talk to people. And a second quarantine would do the same, except it'd be much, much worse. Namely, because of that one thing that's draining our water, stealing our electricity, and taking our jobs, the big AI. With the onset of a second lockdown, the opportunities for AI to be integrated into all aspects of life, as if Microsoft is a governing body running this country, is literally going to break the floodgates of what's possible. I mean, one example I can think of, human-to-human interactions. A fresh new batch of people are going to be more lonely because of this, hopefully, a fictional second pandemic. And with that, there's going to be a sudden explosion of demand that creates a big market for services like a character AI or whatever that allow you to speak to AI-generated imitations of human beings, or, in this case, fictional characters. I bullshit you not. Like with this character AI thing I mentioned, you can literally speak to John Port. You know, the brain rot meme or whatever. I'm not kept up with brain rot, dude. In that same vein, virtual romantic partners are going to be on the rise, and human-to-human connection it's basically going to be on its last legs. Because every person cooped up in their home, lonely, depressed, they're just gonna ask themselves this question. I mean, why try to know someone when I have a piece of technology right in my back pocket or right in front of me that can give me an amount of social satisfaction that I need without all the annoying cons of dealing with a real person? I mean, if the whole idea of people falling in love with AI chatbots in 2026, where we do have the freedom to go out and about and touch grass, is a massive problem that everybody's talking about, think about how much worse it could be if we were all in a pandemic situation stuck at home. And believe me, this is not the worst that the big AI can do. If a second pandemic were to happen, a generative AI slop content is going to absolutely explode. Half of what you see nowadays is AI so good that it makes you question your reality. I mean, it's like you're losing your damn ability. It's like you're losing your goddamn ability to tell apart fiction from reality. And it only leads me to ask one rational question. What if it's taken to the next level? I mean, in this fictional second pandemic situation, a lot more people are going to have a lot more time to experiment with and use AI to generate content. And that's not all. The people making the damn AI are also going to have all the more incentive to improve their AI and essentially scale it, make it more capable of doing things. I mean, still in the same vein on how this pandemic are going to change how we perceive our reality, social media in this hopefully a fictional second pandemic scenario is going to absolutely blow up. Not necessarily in the same manner that sites like Instagram, Snapchat, and especially Discord did back in the day, but what's going to happen is that people are going to create more content. With the whole AI thing on the loose that I just mentioned, things are gonna get pretty interesting to say the least. A lot more people are just gonna take one look at some random news headline on how the world is continually shitifying itself and go like, the hell is the point? And just start to lay down and rot. By the end of this second fictional pandemic, human beings will be all the more closer to being senile lizards who survive solely off of pure mental stimulation, I can't pronounce it. Also, a trend I've noticed with different social media platforms since 2021 is a constant promotion of what is essentially shock content. By shock content, I'm not talking about human beings being cut up as if we're playing Fruit Ninja or something, but basically stuff that would be considered outlandish and inappropriate, just maybe not too long ago, 10, 20 years ago. I mean, just think about it. Look at where we are in 2026. We've got the looks vaccine epidemic, where people are hitting themselves with hammer on camera and injecting freaking I don't even know what concoctions these are into themselves. We have literal US versus Iran AI propaganda.
You're my favorite toy.
and we have like evolved neo rage bait contents. Shit is not at all the same when you compare it to 2020. I think it would be safe to say that a second quarantine so soon would turn the whole political sphere and like the entire global economy into literal Armageddon. It shouldn't take a genius to understand that a second quarantine would have a very similar economic effect in the world as the first one did. It will tank the global economy to absolute dog water. Life in many ways would become a lot harder. A lot of people during quarantine were barely hanging on by a thread, but with how much cost of living has risen over the past half decade, I believe that people would not even have enough to afford even rent, dude. Without some form of like in-person minimum wage job, people would either be forced to find ways to pay their bills using the interwebs or face homelessness, which is something to say the least. Like, imagine being homeless during quarantine. Yeah, even though it's like easy enough for me to like just like do a little typing and search an article about the subject, it's just, oh my god, dude, it's just so crazy. I just can't even, dude. If another quarantine were to start, this year's November would be looking kind of interesting, given how midterms in the United States at least are coming up. And if you have any memory of how 2020's election went,
I pulled up to the club and fucked this one bitch. Turns out it was a whole ass nigga. Had to shoot that bitch up.
Ah, come on, Donnie. You know you fucked that ladyboy ass nigga on purpose, you bogus ass nigga.
I think it's pretty safe to say that any election anywhere in the world is gonna be wild. It's gonna be crazy, dude. Especially considering this is quarantine as the second season did. And taking into consideration how the last presidential election went, the gender split we see online and in person is only gonna turn into a freaking canyon, bro. A Grand Rapids type of shit. Men and women are going to hate each other so much to the point that it's gonna be, I personally think it might devolve into a war. Random video topic, might come out in the future, but like I want to talk about the gender wars a little bit. But like men and women are going to hate each other so much to the point where like not even the people who are trying to escape this whole gender war stuff can even avoid it. One day, if these type of people are randomly going to scroll TikTok or something and going to come across something like this. Yeah, I mean, like, considering that this is a piece of content that was made in the like post-quarantine era, believe me, I believe that it can get a whole lot worse, a whole lot more inflammatory. So, yeah. Dear old 2020, and that time to be alive. I hate all men, by the way. But, hold up. There's a big aspect of this hopefully fictional quarantine that I haven't even made a single mention of. I've spent so much time talking about the effects of another potential shutdown that I haven't even made a mention of the actual thing that would cause it, which is the outbreak and rapid spread of another contagious pathogen. The thing about the actual disease that caused a funny 2020 situation, which is named this, is that when compared to other viruses, as much as it was spreadable, it wasn't that deadly. Unless you were like some chain smoker or some grandpa with a already compromised immune system. Although it is a respiratory disease, it's not something like the disease that I'm about to make a mention of. To prove my point, I want you to imagine a 2020 situation breaking out, except replace the C virus with Ebola. Except the fact that you have to imagine that at all is the whole point, because, believe it or not, this almost actually happened. Ebola spread very quickly throughout different African countries and even made its way to the United States. But because the sitting president of the United States at that time wasn't an incompetent, child-loving retard, the epidemic was only limited to Africa and never became a full-blown, like, global pandemic. Yo, by the way, a shout out to this lovely woman on the screen right now for all her efforts in essentially containing this virus. Your efforts are appreciated and may you rest in peace. But just imagine if it was the incubate orange turd sitting on top at the time and he took the same course of action that he did in 2020. West Africans and black people in general would have gotten shit on by racists all over the world like how Asian people did during the actual quarantine. The economy would have been so much worse. Life in general at that point would just basically be on one massive L. Really, of all the elements of what a second quarantine would look like, what the actual disease that would induce another massive global shutdown is nothing but a massive Pandora's box. Maybe the disease this time around is something far more benign than C19, but far more contagious. Or perhaps it could be something just as spreadable, but a lot more deadly. It's honestly really hard to think about since I am not a doctor, but it really goes to show just how fragile life could be. Because our leaders are insistent on lining their own pockets rather than actually working for the people they govern, depending on what this disease is, a quarantine season 2 could be a whole lot worse. Now I'll admit, this video in its entirety is precipitated on a downright retarded hunch. Just because Mr. Orange, a single nanometer defeater, is sitting on the throne of the I hate black people country, and because Mr. Women shouldn't have an education over here got blown up by Brock from Brawl Stars, doesn't mean that quarantine, the second season, is going to happen. But if I haven't already made it clear, I strongly believe that a second quarantine would basically turn the world into Armageddon. If the so-called elites were to fuck around and allow another quarantine to happen, I personally would do my best Kurt Cobain, Marilyn Monroe impression, if you catch my drift. When the lockdown first hit in 2020, my social life was primarily online, and so because of it, quarantine was less of this catastrophic event that ruined my ability to socialize, and more of this like nice vacation stay where school was like almost negligible, even though I almost flunked out of high school. And nothing basically really mattered. I could just chill at home playing Minecraft or Valorant or freaking Genshin Impact like the cringe lord that I was when I was a teenager stuck in the house and really not care about anything. But 6 years down the line, that is not the same. Currently, I have a bit of something called a life, and one that doesn't revolve around Discord or the internet, and it's actually a life I enjoy quite a bit. Sure, it's stressful, and it keeps me from doing certain things I like, such as uploading videos to this channel, but I just cannot comprehend having this itty bitty life I've worked tooth and nail to carve out for myself being instantly crushed. And the thing is that this whole idea of like a second pandemic happening, maybe it's not so outlandish of an idea. Now, going off script a bit, because I wrote this script before the hantavirus broke out, with the way the hantavirus works and how you don't develop symptoms until like a month well after you've contracted the actual pathogen in your system, and with how like the people who were on that initial cruise to what was it called, Cape Verde or something, who were allowed to just go anywhere. Really, it makes me like have so little faith that like another quarantine is not going to happen. Maybe it'll be something closer to an epidemic rather than a pandemic, but really, what's not to say that like that can't happen? Because with the state of the world right now, I don't know, dude. And maybe not an entire pandemic will transpire, but like certainly particular elements of what a second pandemic could look like could transpire in one way or the other, such as this like whole idea of transitioning to the internet. What if a curfew is placed on us for whatever reason, like I don't know, World War Z breaks out and like everyone's not allowed to leave the house after a certain amount of hours? What's to say that the current situation couldn't induce a lockdown? Not to incite any political bias or whatever, but think about it. Who was president at the time when the funny 2020 situation first happened? Who is the president now? With the way he's sending the Gestapo around to kidnap brown children, sending the military to the cities he doesn't like, and shittifying the economy, and making people scared to live their lives because they look too brown or something, what's something to say that he will declare martial law and force people into mandatory curfews, dude? Like, I swear to God, I initially wrote this entire script thinking that it was like nothing but a fun tinfoil hat type of thing, but now it's kind of the whole plausibility of the reality of this type of thing happening again. It's kind of depressing me, I'm not gonna lie, dude. But hey man, at the end of the day, that's all just me.